Hello, and welcome to the Brothers and Sisters Circle, the show that brings the Black community together. We'll discuss the ins and outs of relationships, healing, health and wellness, purpose, and ways to move forward. Let's welcome our host, Mark Monplaisir.
Hello, everybody. What's going on? It's Mark Monplaisir, the author of Strong Women, Fed Up Men, Defeated Sons, Broken Daughters, Healing Generational Pain. We are back with Dr. Joseph Mbele for another conversation. We had him last time on the show, and it was such an awesome conversation. I had to have him back. All right. So today we're going to actually go through chapter 1 and chapter 2 in my book. And we'll talk about all the different components, different aspects, different things that we talk about. It's going to be an amazing conversation. Again, Dr. Mbele, welcome back to the show. Please tell everybody who you are, if they didn't get to see the first show, so they can get acquainted with you.
Thank you very much, Mark. I'm happy to be back here. My name is Joseph Mbele. I'm a Tanzanian. I teach at St. Olaf College in Northfield, Minnesota, a private liberal arts college. I was born and raised in southern Tanzania. I went to school there. I went to the University of Dar es Salaam, graduated in 1976 and taught there for some years. And then I came to the University of Wisconsin in Madison in 1980 to do my graduate studies. I was here for 6 years, 80 to 86. And then I went back to my country to continue teaching. 5 years later, I was recruited by St. Olaf College in Northfield, Minnesota. That was 1990. So I've been here teaching at St. Olaf College. Since 1991, I'm in the English department. I teach literatures from around the world. I teach folklore from around the world. And I'm just very excited to be exploring, the literatures and traditions of the whole world.
Yeah.
From the beginning of time to the present. That's me. Thank you.
Awesome. So, what we're going to do today, right? So Dr. Mbele has been working in his work, has been actually doing work to help the African community, the Black community, really to get connected to the roots of Africa through his, writing and teaching. So we're gonna, talk about that. We're gonna use that actually to supplement my work, my book, really, and to kind of help all of us really to get connected again with the roots of Africa, who we were pre-slavery, and who we ought to be right now post-slavery, and what we can do together collectively to work to become again the person, the people that we were created to be. So let's dive in. So the first thing we're gonna talk about is chapter 1, right? So I don't know if you have your copy, right?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Thank you for the support. Thank you for getting your copy. I really appreciate that. So the first chapter is called African Experiences, right? So what I talk about in that chapter is the experiences that African people actually went through during slavery, and how that experience created a lot of the traditions and patterns that we are actually using today to raise children, to interact with each other, to love one another, to pretty much the way we see each other in a lot of ways have been ways that we were taught from slavery. You know what I'm saying? So how can we use the folklores, the stories from Africa, from the roots, to kind of help us get rid of a lot of the traditions that we were taught during slavery? What would you say to that?
Yeah. You summarized very well what you do in the first chapter. And reading it as an African, immediately I reflected back on, the history that we are taught in Africa
right
nowadays. the history that we are taught, especially after colonialism.
Right.
In the history I teach here in the US, everywhere else, because I teach literature, I teach folklore. Folklore is just the totality of traditions, the songs, the stories, the myths, the legends, the sayings, the proverbs, all those things that are passed on from generation to generation by word of mouth. And it all started in Africa because that's the cradle of the human race. So for me, reading a book as an African, I immediately was, complementing it with the history of Africa.
Mhm.
You tell the history of the Black experience in the Americas.
Right.
So you definitely start with slavery, you know, it makes perfect sense. But you cross the ocean, you go to the motherland, as
Right.
people here say, then you see a different history because we are going back many thousands of years,
Mhm.
thousands before, with the evolution of human beings
Right.
through centuries of growth, in all fields, language and storytelling and technology and philosophy, everything evolved there before Europeans, came.
Right.
First of all, Europeans themselves, they, the people of Africa, humans evolved in Africa and then they migrated to other parts of the world,
Mhm.
including Europe, including Asia. Okay. But Africa continued to be Africa. People in Africa continued to do their own thing,
Right.
building empires. They built strong empires, you know, ancient Egypt, as an example. And then you go south from Egypt, you have the Nubian Empire. You fast forward thousands of years, you go to, say, West Africa, the ancient kingdoms of West Africa, ancient empires in Zimbabwe, Southern Africa, on the East African side, the Swahili civilization. That's the history of Africa before Europeans came back now as
Right.
colonizers, as slave traders, as colonizers. They met Africans who had established vibrant
Mhm.
societies, oh yes, kingdoms in some places, not all places, by the way, but they were very much rooted in their place.
Yeah.
They knew who they were. And so issues of identity and belonging and how, you build a community and the relationships and values, they were very much intact. Okay, so that's the part that I brought into your book, again, reading your book as an African. So if we are talking about how we educate ourselves as uh, people of African descent, whether we are in Africa or here in America,
Yeah.
when I say America, I mean South America, Central America,
Right.
North America.
Right.
Whether we are over there in the continent or over here, how we teach our children, how we teach ourselves, how we conceptualize ourselves, we must join the two things.
Mhm.
We were something before Europeans came to disrupt us
Right.
in Africa through the slave trade, through colonialism, and then through slavery here in the Americas.
Mhm.
We must join those two things. And I think, when introduced to this, it's very clear that we really want to see how we can build,
Right.
you know, from here, So yeah, that's it.
Awesome. No, that's great. I think one thing that a lot of us in the Americas really don't understand is who we are, right? As African descent people, because the story, the history that we clinging to, right? That we have is the one that we were taught, right? But not the one that we
Exactly.
were created with. You know what I'm saying? So
Exactly.
and I think we have to get to a space where we consciously and intentionally learn the history of
Yes.
Africa, so we can start
Exactly.
living in a way that represents,
Yeah.
Africa, who we were
Yeah.
created to be. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So let's move forward. So like I said, we're going
And
to talk
let me add a little detail there.
yes, yes.
You are right, and it was intentional.
Mm.
When the slave traders took Africans from Africa to this part of the world,
Right.
intentionally they wanted to miseducate, to mislead, to make the people here feel as if they were privileged to have been taken out of Africa.
Right.
And so the whole myth of Africa as a terrible place, dark continent, you have been saved, to be brought out here.
Right.
And that miseducation is still a big issue. There are
Absolutely.
so many people, Black people in the diaspora here, who don't even want to think about Africa. They are ashamed of the African heritage.
Yes.
Those are the issues. It
Right.
was intentional.
Yes.
It was intentional.
Keep going. Let me just close my window real quick. I forgot to close it. It's loud out. Keep talking. Keep talking. I'm still listening.
Yeah, yeah. So if we are talking about building better understanding, we just have to know where the problem started. It was intentional. And there's an African writer, very famous writer from Nigeria, Chinua Achebe, one of the greatest novelists, ever. He said the agenda must include, in terms of us Africans, rediscovering, where we came from and all this, we must go back and try to see where the rain began to beat us. That's the phrase he uses.
Yeah.
Because we have been damaged. So we need to trace our steps and see where the trouble started. And so that's what we are trying to do here.
Right. Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think, you made a really good point when you said the story that we've been taught.
Yeah.
It doesn't do us justice. And that
No,
was
intentional.
intentional. That was intentional.
It was intentional.
Right? And
it was intentional.
we've also been taught to see each other
Yeah.
as negative, as a negative version of ourselves, right? It's almost like I look at you, as an African descent man, and I see a negative version of myself, right?
Yeah.
We look at people, people from different parts of the Americas as again, like if we look at I remember when I came here from Haiti, Jamaicans and Haitians didn't get along, right? Because we were rivals, because Haitians felt like they were better than Jamaicans felt like they were better than Haitians, but that's the way we've been, we kind of been put against each other to keep us divided. You know what I'm saying? And even here, like African descent Americans see themselves as again more valuable or superior to Caribbean African people. We know, which doesn't really make sense, because that doesn't help us move forward. It doesn't help us come together and unite and create and build and become better for each other.
Exactly.
Yeah. So,
and those are issues you develop in your chapter 2.
Yes.
And we are going to go into those. I think you do a great job of really in great detail explaining how that was done.
I appreciate that.
And, I really learned a lot there. Yeah. You do a good job of showing, how the damage was done.
Right.
And the manifestations of it. In terms of how we treat each other, how we look at each other, those kinds of things.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
Anyway,
Absolutely. All right. So let's talk about. Go ahead.
You want to go to the second one or first? Let's continue a little bit with the first one.
Say that again.
Were you going to go to the second chapter? Because I would like us to do a little bit of the first.
Oh no, not yet. We're still on the first one. So now,
okay,
so we're gonna go through the subsections, right? So we're gonna talk about disarmament, right? So how how would you say? So in the book I described the idea of being disarmed, right? The African community is being disarmed and Black people being disarmed, and that that's done by breaking down families, by not letting us think of ourselves as valuable, right? By creating divisions between, different,
Yes.
African descent people from different parts of the of the Americas. So,
Yeah.
what would you say
Yeah.
is another way that we have
Yeah.
been disarmed as African descent?
Yeah. Yeah. I like the metaphor you use there, and yeah, you really got it well. I mean, you got it right. Um, yeah, I mean, yeah, you talked about that, and I think you covered the main point. It was
Yeah,
psychological damage,
right.
and other people have done it, like uh, Frantz Fanon, a great theorist of the same issues from
Hmm.
Martinique, Martinican thinker Frantz Fanon, the psychological damage,
Yeah,
the methodical ways in which the minds were destroyed, poisoned,
right.
and the ways we were disoriented. Um, I don't know if I have anything to add. I think you do a good job of detailing how that was done.
I
Mm.
appreciate that.
And then
Absolutely.
the consequences,
Yeah.
you just laid it out very well, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, no,
The lack of self-esteem,
right.
the lack of self-esteem,
Yes.
the way we treat each other, the way the slave master wanted us to treat each other,
Hmm.
the way we have adopted the mindset
Right.
of the slave master
Mm.
or the colonialists, in
Right.
Africa, for
Right.
example.
Yes.
So, and we have lost the will, the capacity, the ability to think for ourselves
Hmm.
and to define our world ourselves,
Right.
and to define ourselves.
Right. Right.
We are using the colonizers, the slave masters concepts. So that's the disarmament you are talking about. You know, I mean, we move around like people, but we are not really people. We are, I don't know, we are this um, um, disembodied, basically. We are like
Right.
ghosts,
Right. That's
you know.
that's a good point. I think that's gonna segue well into our next subtitle, which is disengagement. Right.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
we have been disengaged because, again, when you don't know who you are, you don't really
yeah,
know your history. It's hard. It's really hard to know who you are if you don't know where you came
yeah,
from. Right.
yeah,
Because you
yeah,
always try to blend in. You always try to adapt to different
yeah,
cultures, because, again, you don't
yeah,
really have a sense of who you truly are. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
And I
yeah,
think that that's one way we've
yeah,
actually been disengaged, um,
yeah, yeah,
post slavery, because,
yeah,
again, we've been
yeah,
given cultures that
yeah,
are not even our own, and
yeah,
we try to create cultures that are not
yeah,
healthy, right?
yes,
And
yes,
I was actually having a conversation with someone about how a lot of us in our communities have a negative sense of freedom, right?
yeah,
It's almost like when
yeah,
you didn't have something, and
yeah,
then you finally get it, you don't know what to do with it.
yeah,
And a lot
yeah,
of us use
yeah,
it in negative
yeah,
ways. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
So I
yeah,
think that we've been disengaged in that sense,
yeah, yeah,
again, because we don't really know it, who
yeah,
we are, who we
yeah,
were, and who we're
yeah,
supposed to be. So we try to
yeah,
be everybody else. You know what I'm saying? We try to
yeah,
be
yeah,
this,
exactly. That's the point.
right. We're very trendy.
Yeah,
We very, we don't, which is why really we don't have
yeah,
healthy and sustainable communities.
yeah. I like the way you put it, that we want to be, we are trying to be somebody else.
Right.
There is a concept of mimic man. We are mimic man.
Yes.
Of course, it also means mimic women. Um, and even the Caribbean writer Derek Walcott, um, and so many other people have used this concept
Hmm.
that we are mimicking somebody else.
Yeah.
We have lost a sense of who we are.
Right.
We are alienated from our true selves, and that's the disaster we really have to address. And it will be a question of wondering and asking how we can do that.
Right.
You know, put ourselves together, return to who we are,
Right.
and be who we are supposed to be.
Right. And I think that's why
Yeah,
your work is important, because your work teaches us how to do that. It gives us, sort of like, materials, right?
yeah,
To
yeah,
to learn who we
yeah,
were pre-slavery,
yeah,
and who is, who a lot of people are, still are in
yeah,
Africa, and how we
yeah,
can
yeah.
we can work together, right? We can
It's
work
very
together
true.
and then
Yeah,
learn, some of the things that
yeah,
we didn't get a chance to
yeah,
learn, right, from our
yeah,
ancestors. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah,
I think your work is important in that regards, because it's gonna
yeah,
help us connect
yeah,
again,
yeah,
who we were
yeah,
pre-slavery, and who we're
yeah,
supposed to be today.
yeah. So you're right. And when I study the African traditions, like I said, when I introduced myself, I study the folklore, the stories of our ancestors, the proverbs, the entire philosophical system. You see, the Africans are very aware of who they are.
Right.
They feel like they are the center of the world.
Mhm.
Oh yes, they are rooted in in a place. They know who they are.
Right.
There's no question about it. Um, in fact, let me tell you, when sorry, there are many stories across Africa of how those Africans first experienced, you know, uh, the white people.
Yeah.
When the first white person showed up in an African village,
Right.
okay, lots of stories of how Africans responded, how they reacted, because they were the norm. When you talk about people or human beings,
Mhm.
they meant the black people. They
Right.
didn't even think about themselves as black.
Right. Right.
They are the people.
Right.
Okay. In Swahili, we have words like uh, mtu, watu. It means person, and then the plural watu, persons. Um, um, there's the whole notion of Ubuntu, which is being human, or the reality of being human,
Mm-hmm.
or personhood, Ubuntu. Um, so when Europeans came, people with this strange skin, the Africans were scared and puzzled and curious. What happened to this person? He's not like us. He's
Right.
outside the norm.
Right.
He is abnormal. That's the African view. So names like Mzungu in Swahili, Mzungu, um, it's it connotes, somebody who is outside of the norm,
Right.
a stranger of some kind. So that's what you get when you study African traditions. The folk tales, the proverbs, the myths, the legends. The Africans make no apologies for who they are.
Right. Right.
We are the center of the world.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you talk to people in my village, for example, for them, that village is the center of the world. They make no apologies.
Mhm.
Any other place is far away, is distant, but this is the place
Right.
where we live.
Yeah.
And we have lost that. We have lost. Look, something I find very strange,
Mhm.
even as a scholar, an Africanist scholar, and listening to scholars from, say, uh, countries that we call, third world countries,
Mhm.
they have this idea of, Europe as the metropolitan countries, Europe and America as the center, and they call themselves the periphery. They talk about center and periphery. Europe is, the metropolitan, and we are, the outlying areas.
Right.
These are scholars, African scholars, highly educated, so to
Mhm.
say. Um, they are Caribbean scholars, African scholars. They believe this myth that Europe is the center, we are the periphery.
Right.
My point is, and I've not said it anywhere else, I'm saying it here for the first time.
Yeah.
My point is this: if you talk to people in my village, we are the center.
Right.
Everything else is the periphery, including Europe.
Right. So I
So
think
this is the mindset that we are trying to articulate here.
right.
To When did we lose this sense of we are who we are, and we make no apologies? We are subject to nobody. we are inferior to nobody. The rest of the world, that's the periphery. We are the center,
Yeah.
whether as a village, like I say, or as a continent.
Mhm.
How, and when did we lose that?
I think, we again, we have to get to a point where we stop uh, trying to fit in. Trying.
Exactly, exactly,
We get influenced a lot
exactly.
by Western cultures, and
Yeah,
even in Haiti, when I was growing up, I grew up in Haiti till I was 17. The culture was different. The culture was
yeah.
looked very, very different. But now, I went back in 2018, and everybody's Americanized.
You
You know,
see?
like like nobody, pretty much wants to be a hate like a natural Haitian
Yeah,
person anymore
yeah,
because it's not cool, right? So so
exactly,
we have this, this belief that we have to be somebody else
exactly,
to be better, right?
exactly,
To be accepted, to feel belonged. You know what I mean? So I think we have to get
exactly,
to a space where we can accept the fact that what, we are of African descent, we are who we
exactly,
are Africans.
exactly,
Again, like if
exactly.
somebody asked me, I am African. You know,
Yeah, yeah,
through
yeah,
Haiti. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And
yeah,
there's no shame in that. So I
yeah,
think that when we get to a space where we can embrace it and admit that this
yeah,
is who we are, we can actually
yeah,
come together and create a
yeah,
coalition where we can actually work
yeah,
together
yeah,
for the betterment of our communities.
yeah. Just going back to, as you say, uh, where we came from, trying to return to that so that we no longer feel the need to be somebody else,
Right.
to be Americanized, and we are from Haiti or from Tanzania, you know. And that is the kind of problem that people like Franz Fanon, as I said, dealt with, and it's an agenda that we must continue to pursue. And I'm glad we are having this conversation. Somebody from Africa and somebody from the Americas,
Right.
and we are trying to see, together, to think together,
Right.
how we really need to put our act together again.
Mhm.
I think this could become a very useful way
Yeah.
of, first of all, we respect each other's background.
Absolutely.
We acknowledge we are different. We grew up in different parts of the world,
Right.
but we are also aware that we need to work together
Right.
to explore those differences. There will be times when we disagree or we see reality differently, but we have the same goal.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
we will struggle, we will get lost sometimes, and sometimes we will get it right.
Yeah. No, that's the
Yeah,
whole point. That's the whole point, right? It's
yeah,
it's the same concept. When you go to when you go to another country, you go to explore,
yeah,
right? You go to you go
yeah,
to visit to learn. And
yeah,
it's the same, I believe that it should be the same even here. If I'm talking to you, I'm exploring
yeah,
your mind, right? I'm learning
yeah,
from you. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah,
So I think we should accept and embrace differences because that's
yeah, yeah,
how we
yeah,
learn. You know what I mean? If
yeah,
if we
yeah,
all the same, then there's
yeah,
not much learning,
yeah,
right? So we
yeah,
have to be able to
yeah,
embrace each other,
yeah,
embrace our differences, and
yeah,
then use
yeah,
those differences
yeah,
to better,
yeah,
to help better each other.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think in your book,
Mm.
you make it very clear that um, something about we have learned certain things as a result of the colonial, slavery experience.
Right.
The question is, how do we unlearn them?
Right.
How do we unlearn those things? Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
yeah.
And you go ahead and talk about the one thing we have learned is to distrust each other, to hate each other. Like you said,
Yeah.
Jamaicans and Haitians.
Right.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Africans from the continent and black people in the United States, for example.
Right.
Yeah, I think that way. First of all, let me say this: your two chapters are not really separate. One continues the story of
Right.
the other one.
Right.
That's what it is. That's
Definitely.
why I keep hitting the second chapter
we're
before
gonna get to it. We're gonna get
before
to
you even allowed before you have even allowed me. I already hit the second, because
it.
they are inseparable. The one
Right.
elaborates on and extends the
Yeah.
argument of the first one. Yeah,
Right. So
yeah,
let's go into the second chapter, which is strong women,
yeah,
fed up and defeated sons, broken daughters.
yeah.
I've actually been asked a lot of questions in regard to the
Uh-huh,
title. Why did I choose
uh-huh,
that title? And
uh-huh.
then, what's the correlation, right, between
Yeah,
women
yeah,
and defeated sons and broken daughters? I'll just give a quick overview of that. Um, when when we look at what we were taught from slavery, right?
yeah, yeah,
A lot of hurts, a lot of pain,
yeah,
and
yeah,
a lot of things that our ancestors,
yeah,
grandparents, parents,
yeah,
never
yeah,
really learned to heal from. So they
yeah,
pass those traditions down, they pass those hurt
yeah,
down. And so we
yeah.
still using them because we're not aware of all the detrimental habits that we were given. So when I talk
Yeah,
about, strong women, quick story, I grew up with my grandparents, and I
yeah,
remember my grandmother, whenever she was going through a hard time, and she would always pray for strength, right?
okay.
She would always pray, to God to give her strength to deal with whatever it was that she was dealing with. But but for me, I always thought that strength is not really gonna make you better, right?
Uh-huh.
Because if having the strength can actually, you know, prevent you from seeking healing, right? From
Hmm.
solving whatever it is that's hurting you, because you have the strength to deal with it. You know what I mean? So I always
Yeah,
felt like, what, we need to learn how to heal from all the brokenness
yeah,
we were given, right?
yeah,
Having the strength is one thing, but
yeah,
if we don't learn to heal from those things,
yeah,
we
yeah,
always gonna have to require strength to seek
yeah,
strength in order to
yeah,
deal with some of the
yeah,
brokenness that we're dealing with. And so
yeah,
so that's where the strong
yeah,
women part comes in. And
yeah,
then the fed
yeah,
up man is the fact that you have but let's talk about defeated sons first. So as a boy, you grow up watching either your dad or your mom working tirelessly, right? Working to make ends meet, but it's never really enough. You know what I'm saying? And then
yeah,
as a boy, you grow up trying to do the same, but you
yeah,
never really meet the expectations of doing those things, right? Of becoming a
yeah,
man, because
yeah,
in a lot of our communities for Black boys,
yeah,
we're seen as men, right?
yeah,
When I was growing up, even as a kid, I had to, do things that men do, right? I had
yeah,
to help my grandfather take care of the crops, take care of the animals, even when I
mhm,
was, 5, 6 years old. You know what I mean?
mhm,
So I never really
mhm,
had the chance to be a boy and, be
mhm,
loved and be all those things. But I had to grow up, to help my grandfather. You know what I'm
yeah,
saying? Because that's what
yeah,
men do. Like
yeah,
you work to take care of your family. So a lot
yeah,
of boys, you grow up, especially for sons who grew up in single households. They're pretty much forced to even when it's not an expectation from whoever the parent is, but they feel like, what, I have to do this to help my parents. I have to do this to take care of, business. So when that happens, a lot of boys, grow up too fast, not
yeah,
really learning how to be men, but they think they're men, so they make
yeah,
decisions as men.
yeah,
And so, so by the time they become adult, it's almost like, what, I've been doing this for so long, right?
yeah,
And I've never really gotten the satisfaction of actually
yeah,
doing it correctly. So
yeah,
I'm tired, right?
yeah,
So a lot of men, get fed up because of the fact
yeah,
that they've been functioning as men since they were kids, since they were boys,
yeah,
but they never
yeah,
really got it right. So
Yeah.
when they become adult, it's like, you know what, I really don't know how to do this. And a lot of us weren't taught to be, to be humble enough to seek help, right? To ask questions,
Yeah.
to learn different, to learn better. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
so a lot of us get tired, which is, it's another reason a lot of, a lot of men, leave relationships,
Yeah.
because it's like, well, if I'm dealing with this woman, I don't know how
Yeah.
to do it. I can't please you. I can't satisfy
Yeah.
you. I can't do anything right. So I'm tired. There's no need
Yeah.
to stay here anymore. You know what I mean? So now,
Yeah.
so that's where that comes in with the fed up men. And then when we look at the broken daughter cycle, again, a lot of little girls, they grow up. Let's say, some girls don't have fathers, right? So they grow up
Yeah.
watching mom doing all the work, doing extra. So they, again, they get broken, right? Because
Yeah.
kids are supposed to be loved, kids are supposed to be taken care of, and a lot of kids in our communities don't get that. And so when
Yeah.
when you, as a little girl, if you've been dealing with something like that with hurt, since you were a kid, and by the time you become an adult, you become strong, right? Because
Yeah.
you can't let that break you down. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You can't let the
Yeah.
hurt, the dysfunction, the lack of fatherhood, or your mom, working extra
Yeah.
or not happy with herself, break you
Yeah.
down. So you have to be better, right? So
Yeah.
you acquire that strength, and then that
Yeah.
becomes who you are. So because of that cycle, we don't seek healing,
Yes.
and so we
Yes.
continuously try to be strong and try, and get fed
Yeah.
up, and when things get really hard, it's either, what, you say, well, I got this, right?
Yeah.
Even if it breaks me down, it's gonna make me stronger.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But the
Yeah.
reality is, when things don't break you down, they don't just make you stronger. They I mean, they break you down.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That,
Yeah.
a lot of mental illness in our community. So
Yeah.
that was a quick breakdown of
Yeah.
but where the title came from. So let's go back to
Yeah.
we're gonna segue from the first chapter, which is the African
Yeah.
experiences, to
Right. Yeah.
how
Yeah.
the African experience create that
Yeah.
mindset. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Create the
Yeah.
mindset of, what, we have to be strong. Because again, if you
Yeah.
look at it, for women, if you were if slave time, right? If your kids were being taken, snatched right out of your hand to be sold into slavery,
Yeah.
you had to be strong. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
if you were being, abused and raped and all those things, by your masters, you had to be strong. Because if not, then then you're gonna quit in life, right? So my thing is, we have to learn to get
Yeah.
rid of the mindset where we have to be superhuman, right?
Yeah.
Or we have to be, super anything, and let go of that mindset and start looking for, for healing, and ways to be better and healthier and kinder and more loving to ourselves and to each other and for each
Yeah.
other. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so what do you say?
Yeah.
I know I said a lot.
Yeah. 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 So
What do you say to the connection of,
exactly.
the history of slavery to
Yeah.
how, we'll talk about,
Yeah.
women first, and then we'll go into Fed
Right.
after that.
Right. So talking about you, I mean, listening to you, I'm recalling how you explained in the first chapter, and then the second, the damage that was done. You say very graphically, and it's unforgettable.
Right.
Um, what in the late days of slavery, watching the man, being abused and this and that, and the partner is helpless.
Right.
Watching the woman being abused and everything, and the man who knows they were supposed to be protecting, they can do nothing.
Right.
The way you express this, it is so painful. It is so real. I can, in fact, when I was reading that, And you went on and on and on, watching the children being abused and children watching parents being abused, and they can do nothing.
Yeah.
Because if they try to do something, the consequence was drastic.
Yep.
Even that is an understatement.
Right.
So to be in that kind of cycle all your life, there's no end to it.
Right.
And as you say, you know, to survive that and to still be alive, there has to be some really deep
Right.
strength here that we don't even know.
Absolutely.
To survive generations of that. So when I was reading that, as an African, again, I have to emphasize, and I would like my African listeners to hear this. I
Mm-hmm.
really felt all Africans should read that thing you are explaining there. Reading that as an African, because Africans don't have a story like that they can tell. They do not.
Right.
Therefore, when Africans come here, I think they have a lot of homework to do. They should read what you wrote,
Yeah.
because it will foster a deep understanding of how different we are in terms of experience.
Right.
In fact, it's because of the kinds of things you say here, the historical experience under slavery and how it has disconnected and disoriented and destroyed
Mm-hmm.
human beings, destroyed the possibility of somebody actually becoming, say, a good father,
Right.
or the possibility of becoming a good mother, in the sense of really embracing what they are and what they are supposed to be without the burdens.
Yeah.
Because what you are saying here is the experience imposed such huge burdens on the people.
Right.
Some men are incapable of remaining in the relationship. They have to run away, you say.
Right. Right.
They're just incapable
Yeah.
because they don't know how they can pull themselves together and be there and
Right.
be accepted and be a real man again. So it's because of the kinds of things you say here, very graphically and very persuasively. And reading at them as an African, I said, all Africans need to hear this, need to study this. In my book, my latest book, and that's where I see a connection now, a very direct connection. I'm glad you said what you said, because in my recent book, there's a place where I say, there's a little essay, being African in America. That's the title of the chapter,
Yeah.
Being African in America. And one of the things I say is this: Africans who come here should not pretend to be African Americans.
Right.
They should not pretend to be African Americans.
Right.
It's because of the kinds of things you say.
Yeah. Yeah.
Therefore, what do I say? Africans need to come here and read and study that history that you are telling,
Mm-hmm.
to understand where the African American, African Caribbean, Afro Haitian, African Brazilian is coming from,
Yeah.
to understand it deeply, or to try as best they can to understand it, just like I'm trying.
Right.
And also for the Africans in the diaspora here, Africans from Haiti and from Jamaica, to study the history of Africans who remained in the continent, on the continent. Um, so that's one thing I derive from reading your first chapter,
Mm-hmm.
how graphic the story is that you are telling.
Right.
I realized uh, Africans need to read this. They shouldn't take anything for granted,
Yeah.
and they should not pretend to be African Americans.
Right.
Okay, so we are here as Africans, and you see Africans, joining together, with African Americans, and Black Lives Matter and everything, which is very important.
Right.
That solidarity is very important, but we should not pretend we really understand the reality the
Right.
way African Americans understand it,
Right.
or the way Mark understands it. No, we shouldn't pretend that.
Right.
We should develop a deep respect for the difference. Different experience,
Mm-hmm.
but we want to build something. We respect each other's story.
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's one thing I gained from just reading the meticulous way in which you express the predicament,
Right.
the horrible predicament,
Right.
where you see somebody who you are supposed to protect, where you see them abused and you can do nothing.
Absolutely. And I think that's, that's where, let's talk about rooted resentment. And
Yes,
for the most part,
yes,
that's where that came from, because imagine, if you were created to to do a job, right?
exactly.
It's your job, but you failed in
Yeah,
that job. You couldn't do it, right? Not because you didn't
yeah,
want to, but because you couldn't do it. So so when we look at again how men and women couldn't help each other, right?
yeah,
It's almost like I'm looking at you. Let's say I'm you're my parent. You're a parent, right? You're looking at your child being abused in
yeah,
front of you, right?
yeah,
And you can't do anything to help,
yeah.
right? So that creates a disconnect between that
Very
child,
much so.
right? So when we
Very much
look at
so.
the relationship between African descent men and African descent women, because of the fact that what we went through this experience, but we couldn't
Yeah,
help each other, right?
yeah,
So I'm looking at
yeah.
you as the women who were supposed to support me emotionally, to be there for,
Exactly,
but you couldn't,
exactly.
right? You couldn't
Yeah,
be, right?
yeah,
So and then
yeah,
you're looking at me as the man who was supposed to protect you, right?
yeah,
But I couldn't
yeah.
do it. So that created resentment that I feel like
Yes,
we don't talk about in our culture, in our communities, and partly because we don't want to face the fact that it happened,
yeah,
right? We don't want to
yeah,
face the fact that
yeah,
what, we came
yeah,
really
yeah.
far, right?
Yes,
We came from
yes,
this experience to where we are today.
yeah,
It took a lot of hurt. It took a lot of
yeah.
brokenness. It
There's a
took
lot of
a lot
brokenness.
of,
Yes, yes. I was going to use that same word.
yeah,
There's a lot that's really broken.
a lot. So we have to face the
Yeah,
reality that what,
exactly.
and what I said, is we went through it together. So there's no blame,
Yeah,
right? There's no,
yeah,
it's your fault.
yeah,
There's no, you're
yeah,
doing it, we're doing this wrong.
yeah,
It's that, what, we went through it
yeah,
together. We
yeah,
both have hurt,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
We have to come together and acknowledge that we're both hurting, right?
yeah,
Acknowledge that we both went through
yeah.
it, and we have to come together to heal together,
Yes,
right? And
yes,
we have to accept
yes,
the fact that what, you have your brokenness, I have my
yeah,
brokenness, and it started
yeah.
from here, right? This is where it stemmed from. So we have to face that reality, and then
Exactly.
where we can actually help each other,
Yeah.
right? Instead of
And
blaming one another.
exactly. And so when you talk about people learning again, like how to be a man, learning again how to be a woman,
Right.
learning how to be an African man
Mm.
in the Americas, an African woman over here. That's where I say the African tradition, um, in African traditions, there was not that brokenness. Um, maybe I said this last time. So when girls were growing up, girl is born, she's developing, she reaches, adolescence,
Mm.
the boy is growing up. There were organized systems of education,
Right.
initiation, initiation rites
Yeah.
for boys, initiation right for girls. To get the girl to know who she is as a person, as a woman now, and the responsibilities she's going to assume of being a mother, being a wife, how to take care of the husband, how to take care of the children. There was that solid grounding in the idea of who you are and what you are supposed to be and what you will be.
Mm.
Same for the boys, who you are, what you are supposed to be, what you will be, and being a father and being a husband, and uh, and also your role in the community now. Your
Mm.
role. There was no brokenness.
Right.
There was no broken. So the question now, and I think we tried to touch this last time. Could this heritage provide some kind of basis for the learning that we want to, accomplish?
Yeah.
You know, could it provide a model? Could it provide, you know, um, something we can hold on to? Because the way you write these two chapters, somebody reading it, they might think, oh my God, it's such a vicious cycle. It can never be broken. It could
Okay.
lead to pessimism because if you follow it this way, there's a big problem. This way, there's a big problem.
Mm.
This way. So it's a tough story you are telling.
Right, right. It is.
So
And
how do we break out of that that impression that, oh my God, we are trapped and trapped forever?
right. So,
So
so that
yeah,
that's where I talk about, and well, that's why I broke down every
yeah,
every component component I talked
uh-huh,
about, like the
yeah,
strong
yeah,
women, how to learn to to reject the notion of you
yeah,
have to be strong, right?
yeah,
All the
yeah,
time, and the fed up men, how to reject the notion that you are fed up, and how to learn to not be fed up, right?
yeah,
And how to
yeah,
learn to raise children to not be
yeah,
broken and defeated. You know
yeah,
what I mean? So
yeah,
so I talk
yeah,
about
yeah,
all those things in later chapters. But
yeah.
we have a question. Someone says, what do you think about Black people having to beat their children to correct them so they can learn good manners? Is that slavery that we could? So we talked about that in the last
Yes,
episode.
yes, yes,
And
yeah,
and my my opinion about that was it's again it's that stem from slavery, for the
uh-huh,
most part, because we feel like we have to beat children into submission. Because think about it, if as an adult you would not want somebody to beat you up, right?
mm-hmm, yeah,
There's no no ifs and but or maybe you would not want somebody to beat you up. So so a lot of times as parents, especially when we get frustrated, we tend to not use words and use actions, and the actions is usually beating the children, right?
yeah,
And it's it's not healthy. For me personally, I don't think
yeah,
it is. I got whooped a lot when I was a kid, and that affected me psychologically. And so I try not to, use that same method of discipline
uh-huh,
with my daughter, because I understand the detrimental psychological
yeah,
aspect of it. So so and that again, when we look at the history of slavery, how we our ancestors used to get beat up, right? To submit,
yeah,
to obey, to listen, to to correct,
yeah,
to do what was needed of them to do. So I think we should
yeah,
try not to
yeah,
beat our children to discipline them,
yeah,
because sometimes when children act up, it's because they want attention, it's because they want connection, they want a conversation, they want they it's a moment to teach, it's a moment to to pause and connect with them. And sometimes, yes, it might get frustrated, but you have to also check that frustration to understand where it's coming from, right? Is it about me as the parent, or is it
yeah,
really about the children? You know what I'm
yeah,
saying?
yeah.
So so yeah, so definitely thank you for that question.
And we talked about this last time,
We did.
and
Yes.
since maybe some new people will be listening,
Right. Uh-huh.
um, um, we differed a little bit about that.
Right.
And in fact, in my book, there's two chapters there about, one is it takes a village to raise a child,
Right.
and then the other chapter is spare the rod, spoil the child. And you raised a point, and I really appreciated it when you said parents might beat the kids to take out their own frustration
Right.
on the kids, and I agreed with you.
Mhm.
That's very destructive for the child,
Yeah.
and it's not. Now, the way I grew up, the way we Africans children grew up is different.
Right.
Our parents, they were quite, together in terms
Right.
of their psychological,
Mhm.
mental, whatever, because the communities were there. They had friends, their relatives, they had everybody visiting everybody. Everybody is connected. They are not alienated as parents. They are not working alone to raise the kids.
Right.
In fact, it's so easy because the whole community raises your kid.
Right.
Parents would be gone the whole day, and we kids would be taken care of by any adult who passed through the village. And we kids were free to play everywhere, play with other kids. It was that kind of thing. So when we made a mistake and a parent took a stick to whip us, the parent was very stable. They were not taking out their frustrations on us, not at
Right.
all.
Right.
They were very stable. They whipped us, they scolded us, and they meant to correct us.
Right. Right. Well, it
And
it,
when
it
we did,
is
it was
done.
different. The
Right.
context is
Right.
different.
Yeah.
That's why I
Done with love.
advocate. That's why exactly. That's
Right.
why people like me, we still advocate the old style of spare the rod, spoil the kid.
Yeah.
I've never beaten my kids. By the way, I would
Right.
never. Oh
Right.
no,
Right.
I just theorize. I just theorize.
Right. Right. I
Yeah,
agree. I think any type of physical abuse or emotional abuse
and
is
it's not even. We wouldn't even call it abuse.
right. Right.
The kid is whipped once and it's over.
Right.
And
But
yeah,
I think anytime you set to hurt somebody,
I
uh,
see. I see.
I honestly don't believe that there is
Uh-huh.
it's
Yeah, that's where we differed, and it's okay to differ.
right, right.
Yeah, and
Right.
besides, you are the expert in child psychology, and those I am not.
But
So I
I
respect
I see
that.
the
I
effect. I
respect
see the
that.
negative effects, right, of that. And
Yeah,
there's something to say too. Even in Africa,
yeah,
I'm not that versed in African
mhm,
history. I took a
yeah,
course in college, and I
yeah,
did some research. But we also have to look at when
yeah,
when the Western colonizers even
yeah,
went to Africa, right, to
yeah, yeah,
subdue Africans, right, to catch
yeah.
Africans.
Oh yeah,
There were beatings, right?
very much. There was a lot
Exactly,
of
right there.
brutality. There was a
Exactly,
lot of it.
right, right. So
Mhm.
some can even argue that even in Africa, they were taught, right, to correct by beating. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know what it was
Uh-huh.
pre-slavery, right?
Uh-huh.
Colonization.
Slavery, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
When we look at psychology, not even just
Yeah,
I don't even like going off psychology, but when we look
yeah,
at experience, right?
yeah,
In Haiti, if you
uh-huh,
if you're a child, a
yeah,
man or woman, you grew up in Haiti, you got whooped, right?
uh-huh,
And because it was a culture, you know,
yeah,
we'll all say, everybody will tell you, I'm fine,
yeah,
right?
uh-huh. Okay,
Regardless of the damage that has been done psychologically,
uh-huh,
they will tell
uh-huh,
you, I'm fine. You know what I'm saying?
uh-huh, uh-huh,
Because the level of dysfunction, psychological
uh-huh,
dysfunction, is normal.
uh-huh,
You know what I'm saying?
uh-huh.
So so I mean, I'm glad you never hate your children.
Oh
Uh,
no, I don't.
right.
I would never. I would never.
Right, and that also help create
Yeah.
healthier connections, right,
Uh-huh,
with children, right, when you can actually use words,
uh-huh,
to discipline them, to
uh-huh,
communicate with them. I
uh-huh.
think that
Yeah,
definitely create
yeah. But you know
so,
what? I should correct it. Actually, I have only daughters.
right.
So, and in fact, in our culture, they don't really beat daughters.
I
But if those were boys, oh Lord, I think I would be talking another language here.
right,
I have to be very honest.
but
I have to be very, if those were boys, yeah. So
let me ask you
actually,
something.
yeah.
Who usually do the beating of boys?
The father,
The fathers?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And
So
normally they would run to their mother for protection.
the beating is done again because you can't connect with the
Yeah,
child, right? Because
yeah,
if you can have a conversation with a child, you can reason with a
yeah,
child. There is no
yeah,
need, for the beating. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah, yeah.
So
I understand exactly where you're coming from, but I think it's going to be very hard to persuade the majority of people, especially people from my continent.
no,
I
I get
mean,
that.
because they seriously believe that they need to be tough as parents, tough on the kids. Um, my father didn't beat me. Um, no, maybe once or twice on the hands. Yeah, because with some other boys in the village,
Right.
I don't care telling the world, my little stories here. Um, First of all, my father has the biggest orchard in the whole village.
Yeah.
fruits of every kind.
Mhm.
My father had the biggest orchard. People would come from far and near to ask for fruits, and in those days they just got for free.
Right.
Yeah, my father had everything. But one day, coming from school, I joined up with other boys to go steal some other some
Mhm.
men's fruits,
Yeah.
which was stupid because I didn't have to.
Right.
My father had the best orchard in the area.
Yeah.
So my father was very upset when he heard that I had joined other boys to go steal fruits.
Yeah.
Okay, it was just a boyish prank that we were
Right.
doing.
Right. Right.
Oh, my father was upset. He got a stick and whipped me once on this side, and but he looked very upset. So
Right.
I've never forgotten that.
Right.
I never forgot it. In fact, he stopped me completely
Mhm.
from ever thinking about stealing anything.
Right.
I would never steal anything because the impact, the way I think of my father's face, the way it was,
But he was disappointed.
and the fact that he just did once here and once here,
Yeah.
it had never gone away. I never can steal anything
Right.
since then.
Yeah.
So, but what I'm saying is, other parents were more strict, with the actual hitting.
Mhm.
My father, if he looked at you with a stern face, that was enough.
Right. Right.
That was enough to stop you from doing any nonsense. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the point I was making is this: um, you would find it very hard to persuade the majority of people,
Yeah. No,
that they should stop hitting the kids.
right. Well, I mean, here in America is a little different. Different. Sorry, because I don't think it's allowed. For the most part. But I think if we want to change, the course of mental health in our communities,
Yeah.
we have to start having more
Yeah.
more conversations and
Yeah.
less frustration,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Less frustrations and less,
Yeah.
again, using
Yeah.
force to correct,
Yeah.
because that doesn't create connection. You know what I mean? Let's using force and strength to again to connect to other people, to our
Yeah.
children, because that it
Yeah.
doesn't create healthy connection
Yeah. Yeah.
between men and women,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
parents and
Yeah.
children. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Let me tell you something. Now I live in America. I know how Americans do things, and I understand what you are saying. I hear it all the time, and people don't hit the kids here. Whenever I go to my village, and I do that every year basically,
Mhm.
except the last 2 years because of Corona.
Right.
The whole village comes to listen to me. I mean, people almost the whole village. They
Yeah.
come to listen to me tell about Americans. They come to listen. So when
Okay.
I tell them what you have just told me,
Mhm.
that in America you can't beat your child, they are completely
Right.
puzzled by that.
Right.
They wonder what kind of country that is. And then when I tell them that if you beat your kids, social services could come and put you in trouble,
Right.
they think this is the craziest country in the world.
Right. It's
So
it's not
they
their
stay
norm.
with me the whole day. Listening to these strange stories about America and Americans. They
Yeah.
can't believe it that a parent is not allowed to slap their child.
Mm.
But I tell them the truth. I tell them the truth. It shocks them the whole day
Right.
long. I'm telling them these things.
Right.
But again, as we say, we tell these stories. You tell the story from your side, and I tell the story from my side, and it's different.
Right.
And what can we do? We are telling the truth. You are telling the truth from this side, of the coin,
Yeah.
and I'm telling the truth from that side of the coin as well.
Hmm.
And I don't know. I don't know.
Well, I
In
think.
fact,
Mhm.
when African parents come to the USA with their children, I think it's a hardship for them to
Right.
learn to raise kids the American way.
Yeah. It's different.
It's a big hardship.
It's different because
And the African And American children who go to Africa, because there are many Americans who go to Africa
Mhm.
with their children, volunteers, oh yeah, missionaries or whatever. Um, the children will go in the schools in Africa. The children go in African schools. Okay. And kids can be scolded, for example. Teacher will scold the kids. Um, in my country, the government has actually passed laws. Kids cannot be beaten in the schools.
Right.
I think there are serious restrictions.
Mhm.
If a child is to be caned, there are very serious restrictions about, how that can be done, if
Right.
at all.
Right.
It was not that way when I was growing up.
Okay.
So I would say the Africans on the continent, they're also picking up a lot of these Western values, which puts us in a dilemma because we started this conversation talking about how the Western values are overwhelming us. But
Right.
here is one of those
Yeah.
that people in my village have now to accept the reality that it is wrong to hit the kids. This is another Western thing that's coming over there. So
Right.
what should we do now?
Well, I
Pick
would
and choose?
I
Pick
would
and choose?
actually uh-huh.
Yeah,
I would, again think about how again how Western civilization has been
yeah,
affecting Africa, right?
yeah,
How many centuries? You know what I mean? So who's to
yeah,
say what Africans were taught
yeah,
prior to what's happening right now wasn't what was
yeah,
taught by
yeah,
Western civilization.
yeah,
So
yeah,
I think it's a matter of again
yeah,
being
yeah,
open-minded to
yeah, yeah,
to different, right?
yeah, yeah,
And again, we have to look at
yeah,
I'm a big advocate for children's
yeah,
and
yeah,
well-being.
yeah,
We have to again look at
yeah,
their side and
yeah,
again
yeah,
ask ourselves, would
yeah,
we want to be beat up
yeah,
as
yeah,
adults, right? Would
yeah.
if somebody wants to correct us, if somebody
Mhm,
wants to discipline us,
mhm.
would we want that to be
Uh-huh,
with a whip,
uh-huh,
right?
uh-huh.
So
Well, the
I think
African,
I'll let you go real soon.
yeah,
I think
the,
we have to um, we have to start early, right? When you're
yeah,
raising children,
uh-huh,
again you have to start
yeah,
whatever
yeah,
routine, whatever
yeah,
way you want to raise your
yeah,
child. You have to start early because whatever they're used to, that's what they're
yeah,
gonna respond to. You know what I mean?
uh-huh,
So
yeah,
if you get them used to whooping,
yeah,
if you get them
yeah,
used to yelling,
yeah.
if
And
you
it happens only once in a while. The kids normally, it's only very few kids who need
yeah.
a whipping. Honestly, I should say that. I mean, really, really, really. Yeah.
uh,
And also, just a few parents actually are in the habits of beating the kids,
mhm.
I would say.
Yeah,
Um, and they do it only when they think it's necessary. And they are parents. They
right,
love the kids. They want the kids to do well in life.
right. No,
They want the kids
it's
to do
always
well
with
in
love.
life. And the good thing is the children themselves, because they talk with other children and they grow up knowing that the adults want us to do well in school.
Right.
You know, anyway, it's a big topic. I think you and I will come to it again and again, which is
Right.
fine.
Yeah.
We might come to it with different perspectives here and there, different, new thoughts here and there, but
Right.
they don't. It's only for children, by the way.
Yeah.
Those things are just for children. The African cultures, they they know where the whole thing stops. With adults, they get disciplined in different ways.
Right.
Adults who make mistakes, there are different ways of sanctioning adults.
Mhm.
But you know what? Since we are still on your, um, I, I wouldn't like us to stop this conversation without focusing on the last paragraph of your second chapter.
All right.
Yes, at some point, if you will, we before we close,
Yes.
we will have to look at that chapter. I mean, that last paragraph.
Hmm.
That last paragraph is absolutely amazing.
Right.
It captures so many essential things.
Yes. Definitely. So let's talk about we're close to the end. Let's talk about
Yeah,
that.
I thought so. I suspected that.
Yes,
I
yes, yes.
suspected that. Yeah.
And I think the paragraph you referring to is the fact that we love our sons and daughters, right? Uh,
Exactly. Exactly.
right. But until we heal our traumas and whatever we're exposed to, we're gonna
Yeah.
pass them down to our children.
Yes.
So it is
Those
important.
kinds of things. Yeah.
Right.
Keep reading. Keep reading. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So let me read this last
Yeah.
paragraph. So we love our sons and daughters, but until they heal from the traumas we as parents expose them to in their childhood, they'll treat their loved ones the same ways we treated them. As byproducts of slavery, we love our children the same way our masters loved us, with whips and violence. We,
Yeah.
we love each other the same way our masters loved us, with shame and psychological abuse. We love our
Yeah.
friends the same way our masters loved us, by calling each other derogatory names. We have become our masters to each other and to our children. Our sons and daughters learn our ways and teach their children those very same values and traditions.
That is it. That is it. And
Yes.
that's why I was saying, anybody reading this book, again, I've not read the rest of it.
Right.
Anybody reading this book, the picture you draw is so powerful, and this captures it. This
Yeah.
paragraph
Yeah.
captures it.
Mhm.
And so it leads you to keep asking now, how do we get out of this terrible, terrible
Right. Right.
dilemma? How
Yeah.
do we get out of it?
But we have to
Yeah,
understand that,
yeah,
trauma is
yeah,
powerful.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
very powerful. And the
yeah.
thing about, traumatic experience is that it can, go undetected, right? Especially
Uh-huh,
when it becomes the norm, right?
uh-huh,
So in a
uh-huh.
lot of ways, we're and when somebody is hurt, you hang on to
Yeah,
that hurt, and that hurt
yeah,
becomes
yeah,
anger, right?
yeah,
And when you
yeah,
get angry, right, but
yeah,
most people don't understand that, the fact that, what, I'm angry because I've been hurt, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
I'm sorry, in a lot of ways, the hurt
yeah,
didn't start, with with the current situation. It started from
yeah,
childhood, right? It started from, the fact that a parent probably passed it down to you. So
yeah,
one thing I
yeah,
encourage in at the end of the
yeah,
book, when I
yeah.
talk about healing, is to
Uh-huh,
understand your parents or whoever raised you, right? Because
mm-hmm,
they
mm-hmm,
taught you to be a different version of themselves,
uh-huh,
right? So you
uh-huh,
have to understand who your parents are, and then, decide intentionally,
mm-hmm,
do I want
yeah,
to be like my parents or whoever raised me,
uh-huh,
or do I want to
uh-huh,
be who I was created to be? You know what I mean?
uh-huh,
So you have to
yeah,
be intentional with how you want your life to be, with how you want to live your life,
yeah,
and then
yeah,
decide, right? Decide who you are going to be from that point on.
yeah,
Because,
yeah,
we were all inherited some type of dysfunction, some type of hurt, some
uh-huh,
type of
uh-huh,
disappointment.
uh-huh,
And, none of us, is
yeah,
exempt to that. So again,
yeah,
we have to understand the
yeah,
past, right? You don't
yeah,
have you don't have to dwell in
yeah,
the past, but you have to
yeah,
understand where you came from and what
yeah.
that background gave to you,
Good,
what
good,
was
good,
taught to you,
good,
right? And
good,
when you
good.
get to learn that history,
Yeah,
then you can
yeah,
decide, right?
yeah, yeah,
Consciously,
yeah,
intentionally, to you know
yeah,
to move to
yeah,
unlearn again. So I
yeah,
talk about this
yeah,
unlearned
yeah.
concept of how
Mhm.
you were taught to do certain things, how you were taught to
Uh-huh.
love other people, how you were
Yeah,
taught to raise your
yeah,
children, how you were taught to
exactly.
interact with friends, how you were taught to love
Yeah,
yourself, right? So you
yeah,
kind of have to unlearn a lot of things
yeah,
if you want
yeah,
to learn healthier, right?
yeah,
But a
yeah,
lot of us, get stuck
mhm.
on,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
being
yeah,
who we are, right?
yeah,
Because
yeah,
because we feel like, well, my parents raised me to be who I am. This is who I
yeah,
am, and you have to
yeah, yeah,
accept it, whether
yeah,
you want to or
yeah,
not, right? But that's a detrimental mindset, because you're
yeah,
not allowing yourself to grow. You're not
yeah,
allowing
yeah,
yourself to be better. You're
yeah,
not allowing
yeah,
yourself to have healthier
yeah,
relationships and become a healthier version of yourselves, because you have to
yeah,
look at your parents again, that
uh-huh,
for who they were, objectively.
yeah,
You have to look at your
yeah,
mother your father object, not
yeah,
not just as parents, but you have
yeah,
to look at them as a man and a woman, right?
yeah,
Like, were they perfect? No, they weren't,
yeah,
right? They were
yeah,
dealing with their own stuff, right?
yeah,
But you have
yeah,
to understand that they passed down some of those things to you,
yeah,
right? So
yeah,
you have to again make that conscious decision to say, you know what,
yeah,
I'm gonna be
yeah,
healthier for myself,
yeah,
for my children,
yeah,
for the future, for
yeah,
the next
yeah,
generation. Because other,
yeah,
if you don't do that, we're gonna keep continuing the same
yeah,
cycle of
yeah,
traumatic experiences, the same cycle
yeah,
of brokenness, the same cycle of
yeah,
trauma that our parents and grandparents and
yeah,
ancestors
yeah,
passed down to us, because we're not accepting the fact that, you know what, I'm aware of whatever was passed down to me. Now I'm accepting the fact that that's what they
yeah,
were, right? That's what they still are. Now it's my
yeah,
decision. It's my responsibility
yeah,
to do something about them. So
yeah,
that's how we're gonna change.
yeah. You know, for me, if I may say just the last word, based on what you have said, um, when I walk into a classroom, you know, and I see some African American, Afro Caribbean kids
Yeah,
in their classroom, I feel this is um, a privilege for me. It's an opportunity for me to model
right.
the kind of Black person
Mhm.
who makes no apologies about, being who I am, who
Right.
is so confident, strong self-esteem, everything. I tell you, this is something that goes on in my mind,
Yeah.
you know, and I think it's always a privilege to be able to be there for these Black kids.
Absolutely.
Again, because reading the kind of things you write about, I get to see where they are coming from,
Right.
and therefore the sense that I need to be there as the model
That's great.
of somebody uh, you know being a Black person, like here in a white college.
Mhm.
It has never been an issue for me
Right.
because I came with an African mindset.
Mhm.
I am myself. I know what I'm doing. I came here to teach. I enjoy my work. I enjoy relating with everybody.
Right.
I enjoy connecting with everybody in the classroom. The students can see I enjoy what I'm doing,
Yeah.
and it's the whole classroom is full of white kids.
Mhm.
But that one Black child in the class, that one Black student in the class, say from Chicago or San Francisco, or from Haiti, they will see me and how at home I am in the
Right.
classroom.
Right. Right.
So I'm hoping that in my own little way, being in this country,
Mhm.
I can help to model, the kind of thing we want,
Right. Right.
as a father figure, for example,
Right.
so that the Black kids doesn't have to grow with the idea that there's only one way of being a Black man,
Mhm.
and it's the broken way.
Right. Yeah.
If I can just get these kids to begin to be aware that there are other ways of being a Black person,
Right. 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 That's
I think
important.
that would be very helpful.
Absolutely. No,
Thank,
I
yeah,
think that's great. And and
yeah,
and and that's the beauty of, knowing who you are, right? Understanding who you are,
exactly,
and and be
exactly,
proud of that person that you are. And
yeah,
and what I want, people to understand is that even if you don't know who you are, right? But be open, right, to learning,
hmm
right? Be
hmm
open to searching, be open to, because I'll give a quick story and then we'll end on that. When I came here in 1999, I was lost. I felt lost. I didn't know who I was. I felt confused. I didn't want to be here. So I decided to go back to Haiti, uh,
Oh,
to get a
I
better
see.
sense of who I was, right?
Okay,
And where I came from. And
okay,
that was in 2008, I believe. And when I came
uh-huh,
back, I was a totally different person.
uh-huh,
I was totally
uh-huh,
different. I
uh-huh,
got to see friends. I got to see my grandparents. Who
uh-huh,
raised me, and I got a sense of who I was based on who my grandparents were, because they raised me.
uh-huh,
So I got to
uh-huh,
learn some good parts, some not so great parts, and
uh-huh,
then I decided to be who I wanted to be. from that point.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Okay.
But because I didn't know who I was, I couldn't really figure out who I needed to be prior to taking that trip and learning about my past and history. So, for people who don't have that privilege to go back to a place where they can learn that, you have to go back to understanding what slavery did to us, right? Collectively, you have to understand. You know what? This was the history that was passed down to me. My grandparents, learned the same history. My parents learned the same history, and then now I had to learn it because they taught me that history, right? So you have to get to a space where you accept it, and then unlearn it, right? And then learn better, learn healthier. You know what I mean? So thank you so much for this conversation. It was great. I know it went past the time I wanted it to go to, but that it's all right. I appreciate that. Thank you for everybody who joined in. Aisha, thank you. Will Nees, thank you so much. Everybody who stopped by on Facebook. I can't see who joined on Facebook. I appreciate you guys. So we'll have many more discussions about this topic, and then how to come together and heal together and help one another grow healthily, so we can have healthier and more prosper generations to come. So again, thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate you, Dr. Mbele. And we'll definitely come back soon and have another discussion. All right.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, absolutely.
So you can find Dr. Mbele on Facebook and Instagram. I'm gonna add a link to his profile and his pages, and so you can find his work. Again, you can find me on Instagram as well. The links are gonna be in the bio, in the description. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. Thank you for listening, and I will see you soon.
Thank you for watching the Brothers and Sisters Circle podcast. Stay tuned for our next exciting episode.